This is K-Rockcast, the podcast where music and perspectives collide.
I'm Anne, a music lover who's the ultimate fan.
And I'm Kelly, a professional musician. Join us as we dive into the world of the Rose and other Korean and Asian rock bands.
Sometimes we'll agree, sometimes we'll wildly disagree, but what's guaranteed is a passionate, hilarious, and unfiltered conversation about the music that unites us and the bands that inspire us.
On today's show, I know a lot of Black Knights.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is episode 31, Into the World Tour. Kelly, today we are finally deep diving into the Roses' Once Upon a World Tour. And I have to say, I'm kind of missing the Rose right now.
Yeah.
So I think it would be kind of fun to relive all of our favorite moments from this tour. I think there were some unique aspects of the tour. And so I think this will be fun to kind of relive for our viewers and our listeners. But as always, before we dive into the tour, you have an artist recommendation to share today.
I do. It's a little bit of a weird one, this, because you've all heard of him. Well, I say you've all heard of him. You've definitely heard his music. And this is his music. This is Flawed Mangoes. Flawed Mangoes is a guy called Evan Lowe. And Evan Lowe is based in Boston in America, and he is a guitarist. He's been around since, I think it's like 2020, I want to say. It's around about that time. And he creates guitar virtuoso music. It's all played on electric guitar. It's beautiful guitar work, but it's something that is very unusual in the guitar world. So I love guitar. I love virtuoso guitarists. At one point when I was a teenager, I thought I might have been a virtuoso guitarist. That didn't happen.
Ooh, I love this. I love this idea though, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm okay with tap harmonics, and that's about it. There was no way I was ever going to be Steve Vai. It wasn't going to happen. I just couldn't practice that much. I just wasn't built for it, to be perfectly honest. But his guitar playing is beautiful. So you've heard of metalcore and hardcore, but Evan does hopecore.
Ooh, hopecore.
Hopecore, yeah. I mean, it's like I expect like mathcore and things like that, but hopecore just like throws me over the edge. It's like it's too happy. I can't do that. If it's a core, it can't be this happy. So he's signed to APG Music, and he brought out an EP called The Unwavering Hand, and it's beautiful. He has a very definitive technique when he's playing, and it's a technique that a lot of guitarists just can't do. This is something that has developed through, I want to say trial and error. It kind of feels like somebody messing in the bedroom and they've come up with this sound. It's been done before. You will hear it in some sort of metal artists' guitar playing. I hear it in System of a Down. There's one of their tracks where it's used. So basically what he does is, as he's playing, he sustains the note. So he'll strum a chord, he'll strum a note, and then he hits the kill switch. And the kill switch is on the top of the guitar, and it's basically to kill the sound, as it is. So you get like a forced vibrato, and it's this really wonderful, gorgeous sound that it builds. And then what he actually does is he layers it. So he plays a track, creates a loop, plays it again, plays a loop, plays it again, plays a loop, and just keeps building and building and building. It sounds easy enough. This is not easy. This is not easy. It's all about timing. So you have to strum a note, allow it to sustain long enough to be able to go in and go click, click. I think he's using a Gibson SG in one of the videos that I saw him playing, which allows it, because like the kill switch is up at the top on a lot of SGs, and he's playing, and you can sort of hear this like ding ding, and he's like, oh, okay. and it's such a really beautiful sound. It isn't heavy, it isn't in your face. I really like, I think that one of the reasons I've always quite liked virtuoso guitarists is because they came out of the back of like these big screaming guitar players, and they're literally just like shredding away and you get all this screaming and everything else. Don't get me wrong, I love that. But we then had this step into this slightly different side. And I mean, these were guys that were playing that type of stuff, but they kind of evolved it so it became slightly more orchestral and the guitar had more of a voice. So we got people like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Joe Bonamassa, and then we're moving on to people like Tim Henson and that now. And he's brilliant. He's in a band called Polyphia, who I am ever so slightly obsessed with, and they're fantastic. And it's a voice. It's like a choral voice that's playing. So when Evan Lowe came along and he started doing this very unusual style of playing with the kill switch, and it kind of became like a vibrato voice. So you've gone from these very choral voices that you get with like Polyphia, and then you get this really unusual sound, which sounds like somebody that has got this real wonderful, powerful sort of vibrato sustain in the voice. It's just fantastic. There's one track called Kill Switch Lullaby, which I love. It is beautiful. I mean, if you like guitar music, listen to it. If you like anything slightly orchestral, listen to it as well, because it has got that ebb and flow of it. But it's something you can put on in the background, and it's very soothing. It's not in your face. So his latest single is Anthem. Amazing. Go listen to it. It's a really fantastic track. And the last album came out this summer, I want to say it was. Yeah, it was this summer. And that was Anomaly 4. Because apparently he's one of these guys, a little bit like the Rose. They like to stick to a program when it comes to a name. His are always Anomaly 1, 2, 3, and now 4. So
that's
don't be
cool.
surprised when number 5 comes out. He's really prolific, though. I mean, if you go on to any of the streaming platforms, the dude literally just throws out music all the time.
Yeah, you said he kind of like went viral.
He went viral, and it was TikTok, and it was this. It literally just created this sound, and people were like, "What the hell is that?" And then that actually became a trending sound, which is why you probably all know the sound we played a little bit earlier on. But yeah, Flawed Mangoes, go and give them a listen. It's really beautiful music and something a little bit different.
Yeah, I love that, Kelly. You're always finding artists that are unique or different. I think it keeps it fresh for our listeners and viewers. So thank you so much for all your great work. Another plug, we talked about this on, I think, Into the Trauma, but we do have a second Instagram account that Kelly is really managing, the at K-Rock Recommends. And so that, as I think we mentioned in the last episode, is just a place to go of all of these amazing independent, mostly artists of all different genres that she's collecting to recommend out to our followers. So if you haven't started following at K-Rock Recommends, definitely check that out. All right, let's jump into our deep dive, Kelly, the tour. So let's kind of start with an overview for our listeners and viewers of the Once Upon a World tour. The Roses Once Upon a World tour, it consisted of a European, a North American, South American leg. Then they headed over to Asia for a series of festivals and then wrapped up with their final show in Seoul. The tour kicked off on June 9th and then ended on August 30th. They played a total of 29 shows and 4 festivals. It's kind of hard to believe that by the time this episode is airing, it's been nearly 2 months since the end of the tour. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. Now, one of the things that was very different about this tour was the size of the venues, Kelly. And do you remember we had so many episodes where we talked a lot about the venues because, to be very honest, fans were not happy about the choice in venues. But you and I from the beginning, we even before I think like hearing the full album, we knew the type of sonic
Yeah.
direction we felt they were going in with this album. Then once we heard it, we knew this was the type of album you needed to play in these smaller theater size,
It
venues,
was
mostly an average about 3,000
it wasn't gonna
capacity.
work. Yeah, it wasn't gonna work in an arena.
Oh yeah.
It would sound flat in an arena, to be perfectly honest. Um, yeah, it needed to be in these smaller, well, we say smaller venues. I mean, personally, to be perfectly honest, I think they could have gone even smaller still.
Oh, and
Um,
they wanted to, didn't they? I
yeah,
mean, Sammy has said in a lot of Q&As, and he even said it sometimes during his men's section in the shows that they wanted like 2,000 person
yeah.
venue maximum. So
I could
yeah.
see that, and it does make more sense. Because the thing is, I mean, when you're taking on board the type of music it was, and the fact that it's very laid
Mhm.
back, you need. I hate the terminology, but I'm going to have to use it. You need something to replace the flash and balls of a big rock and roll show when you're doing
Yeah.
something that's more laid back, a little bit more folk, I suppose, acoustic. It
Mhm.
speaks for itself. It's got to be more intimate. It works better in that setting because otherwise it gets a bit boring, to be perfectly honest. And I think that's one of the things that they very heavily took on board when they were looking at the aspects of what the actual show was going to look like as well. This is very much a theatre tour.
Yeah. And I think it goes into, as we'll talk uh in a moment, the way they interacted with the crowd was so
Yeah,
different than anything
yeah,
that they had done before. And there were some shows where they really were interacting. They were, taking the phone. And remember at the Maryland show, Sammy took someone's phone who was sitting in
mm,
the front row and he took video with her phone. Like, I mean, that level of interaction that they had. I don't remember the show where the little girl, Dojun picked her up out
yeah,
of the audience. She was maybe 5, 4, 5, and he
yeah.
spun her around and the guys sang yes to her. I mean,
And she sang
that
back,
was the
"No,
level of,
good
yeah,
girl,
and she
good
wasn't
girl.
having it.
Always say no."
But yeah, that was the kind of show that they wanted. And so you're right. I think it wouldn't have translated well into an arena. One of the other things that I feel like we really learned, especially with the show being streamed through
Yeah.
Veeps, the Seattle show, we were able to see the ending credits and see the name again, Kelly, Park Do-joon. Why don't you walk us through kind of what we learned of his level of true involvement in this tour?
I think we can honestly say that World was Dojuni's show. As simple as that.
Yeah.
He he knew what he was doing from the moment of inception. Um, don't get me wrong, I think everybody else was involved, but I think this was his baby. He had an idea in his head. He wanted to do a theatre tour. Um, and the way it was set up is very much, obviously, being a girl from Theatreland, it was very much theatre world. And it was exceptionally well done. So, I mean, one of the things we found out as time has progressed, because obviously they weren't very loud at vocalizing this beforehand, he literally dealt with all of the sort of stage ideology, production, setup, design, visual concept. He did all the sound design and things like that, the playback programming, which he always does anyway. So, I mean, that's nothing new, but he arranged everything. He got the idea of the narration and everything else. So, I mean, we're going to insert a little screen clip now of what was shown at the end of Veeps. And as you can see from this very long list, there's a certain Mr. Dojun that is involved with the mass majority of all of the creation behind this.
Yeah, and I'm so proud because he also served as executive producer.
Hmm.
And I admit I don't know if he's done that in the past on maybe the other tours, but I have to suspect maybe he hasn't to that level. And so I agree with you. I think this was his baby.
Yeah.
You mentioned the narration. And so for anybody, this was a highlight to me that was very unique. When you attend the show, it starts with this narration and it's really funny because it's telling you all the safety features and not to, to turn your phones off and things like that. But it's done in this really funny tongue in cheek kind of way, which
I,
is totally Dojun. Like I
you
absolutely now I see
know
that
what?
he wrote that script and had an AI read it out
Oh
at
yeah,
at all the shows.
and yeah, and had it read out for every language in every accent because it was a specific accent to the specific country that it was
Mhm.
in, etc., etc. It reminded me very much of something that, unless you're British, you won't understand this. We have a thing in the UK called pantomime, and it's the type of voiceover that you get in theatres at Christmas when the pantomime shows on, and it will always start with
Mm.
somebody doing the usual turn off your phones and then God help you, and it will dive into a very, very similar sort of shtick, shall we say,
Mhm.
that was delivered during these shows. So, yeah, I did laugh, but it reminded me very much of Panto days.
Yeah, it was so cute. And then very much like you're saying in this theme of feeling like you're at a theater, there were these it was broken up into kind of acts. It was like
Yes.
act 1 and it set the tone. You have
Yeah.
Soon playing in the background, and then you have this narration, and it's almost a story narration. And the narration follows really it's like the story of the song Ticket to the Sky. And so we talked about the meaning of those lyrics in our Into the World part 3 episode of the boy running to a train in the sky. And there's some beautifully done lighting aspects on the stage during the narration of this story. But I felt like it was such a unique way to start the show. I'd never really been to a concert like that where you're
It's
you're getting
theatre.
kind of
It,
this,
it,
yeah, like a theater style
No, it's definitely
narration.
yeah, no, it's definitely theatre. Everything about it was theatre. I mean, down to like the kabuki drop and everything else that is used. So the guys perform the acoustic set in front of basically what is a silk curtain that allows you to
Mhm.
project lights on it, which gives this beautiful effect of like train lights across the
Yeah.
sky and things like that, and also the clickety clack motion going through the bogies on the actual train and bits and pieces like that. Um, it's really well done. They are tried and tested tropes. They really are. And but I mean we've discussed this frequently. We know secretly that Jejuni is a theatre boy at heart.
Oh
And
yeah, I mean we're trying to start the petition to get him either on the London West End or New York on Broadway. So yeah, he
yeah,
definitely is a theater guy. I mean, I don't you say they're tried and true. Do you mean that as in the theater, or you've seen that with
in
other
theatre,
like
in
art
theatre.
music artists doing that?
No, I've seen music artists do it as well because weirdly enough, because me being me. So World Tour. I saw the Tuesday show in London. I saw the Thursday show in London, and sandwiched very politely in between was a beautiful wedge of Nine Inch Nails.
Mhm.
They use similar curtaining techniques, but on a much grander scale. And they were magnificent because I won't start talking about how good the Nine Inch Nails show was because we're talking about the Rose. But let me just say they use similar techniques to
Mm.
do the show as well, but it was just on a much grander scale. Um, and
Yeah, I mean,
but
for me, I've never seen anything like that. I guess all the music artists I've gone to see, they've never done any kind of theater style presentation
mm,
with their, you know, music performance. So that was like a really new kind
I
of
need
experience for
I need
me.
I need to take you to see somebody like My Chemical Romance. If you want
Yeah. So
theatre, that's the
I think
type of, yeah.
I think what I enjoyed about the way they formatted the show was I mentioned these acts, so it kind of is in these phases.
Yeah.
And what it does then is it takes you on this journey. And then I reflected again back to our 3 episodes where we really dove into the World album. And that's a lot of what we said as we went through that album track by track. We were on a journey with the Rose. We were on this
Yeah.
emotional path and this emotional journey with them. And again, I think they replicated that in the structure and how they
But
move the
yeah.
audience through their show.
Yeah, so very much so. So I mean it's a traditional 3-act show. So obviously you've got the beginning section, which is the acoustic section, which harks back to their beginnings as buskers.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that. You then get the next move, which we'll discuss in a little bit, which is the second act, which is more about them and their development as musicians. And then, of course, we move on to the third and final act, and the third and final act is them being rock stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why don't you go into the acoustic section, which, I like to brag about us, Kelly. I do want to say we called before ever going to one of the shows. We called it that there would be an acoustic set.
We did.
Just saying. Because we know them so well.
We did, but I don't like to brag about that.
I do.
I know you. You're
do.
American. I'm British. I'm a little bit more reserved. We don't brag, darling. Come on. Who won the war?
Hey,
we were doing fine
we're
until
always
you
so in
turned
sync
up.
with the Rose. We're always so in sync with the Rose. I like to call it out when it happens. But yeah, walk us through the acoustic set. It was so lovely.
Yeah, so the acoustic set was absolutely glorious. So it was literally the guys front of stage, next to the spotlights, shall we say. So what they had instead of the traditional limelight as such that you would have on a theatre stage, they replicated it by having what was basically festooned fairy lights across the front of the stage, which was a really nice touch because it gave it that slightly more homemade feeling, which was also kind of replicated a little bit in the actual kabuki blind behind them as well, and that was nice. So the set begins with Ticket to Sky, and it just fits so perfectly well. And I think it was very moving to have an acoustic set straight away. And it was very quiet and ephemeral, and it was one of those things I don't quite think people expected, because they were used to going to a Rose show and them like, ball to the wall and straight out. And here they are, they very quietly walk in, very serene, sit down, very calm, very sort of purposeful, and then start singing Ticket to the Sky. We then move into Childhood. And of course, I mean, it kind of gave it a bit more gravitas with sort of it then moving into Childhood. I think it really touched a lot of people as well because it was so stripped back and raw. We then moved into Definition of Ugly Is. And the thing is, though, with Definition, we all love that song. And I think a lot of us hold it quite close to our hearts anyway. But to me, one of the things that was missing in that little mini crescendo of the song in the middle, and that was so purposely put as the third song, because it's the peak song, it's the pivot song to move it into the next stage. And we didn't have that beautiful guitar solo, and I think a lot of people kind of missed that. But you were never going to get that. You were never going to get that guitar solo with them playing acoustic.
I mean,
you can't do it.
I get it, and I respected the Rose, but being that I've never seen them before this tour, and that is my all-time favorite song of the Rose ever, to not have that feels kind of empty. I'm not going to
Yeah.
lie. And I hope I can, I hope I can see them again, and I hope I can see this someday performed live. But yeah, that I would say that's a critique for me from the show for sure.
Yeah. I think people missed out on that, to be perfectly honest. I understand where it came from, but it was nice to hear this beautiful alternative version of it. And it was very heartfelt. It really was.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we decide that we're going to pick things up a little bit. Well, I say pick things up a little bit. It's She's in the Rain that comes next. But She's in the Rain has got that slight more drive to it, and it's a crowd favourite. So people were starting to sort of slowly... It came out of this almost like cathedral-like revenance that you'd got for the first couple of songs. People were sort of sat there and they didn't really know what to do with themselves. So I saw people sort of sat on the hands. They were kind of just very quietly sort of swaying along and singing along. It was so unusual for a lot of people who'd seen them before or didn't really know what to expect. There was a bit of a weird transition, I think. And I think when it got to She's in the Rain, people were like, oh, okay, fair enough. This is where we're going with this. And then Tomorrow came, and Tomorrow just picked up, and and this is when the Rose started. They stepped out of this very calm, sort of laid back, very over professional sort of gloss that they'd got over when they were doing the acoustic set. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, the guys are here now. They're singing Tomorrow. So this is when we started getting a little bit more interaction with the audience, and some things that I wish I'd never seen, to be perfectly honest. I really don't need to see... I don't need to see Sammy shaking his booty. I really don't need to see that.
All right, we have a great...
that one.
We have a great clip from The Definition of Ugly Is. So let's play that for our viewers and our listeners. Okay, I say that that I was disappointed in the lack of the guitar solo. And then I listen to that clip, and it's just like their vocal work and their harmonies were just honestly incredible.
They're haunting.
I mean, they are haunting. Yes, haunting. And it just... yeah, that one, there was like not a dry eye in the house, I feel like, in that, when that song was being performed.
I must admit,
So
to
good.
me, it kind of got that slight feeling of Take Me to Church about it. I don't know if that's lost on you, but yeah, it had got that slight, because that's what I was saying, it got that reverence to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it was so good. So good. Let's watch Childhood. So I've got a great clip that'll be Childhood from the same show that goes right into She's in the Rain. All right.
Ev-
I have to tell you a highlight for me of the whole show was that She's in the Rain, that harmonizing with those guitars.
yeah, yeah,
That
it
was
was beautiful.
incredible.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And the thing is, all of that stuff is there. You just don't hear it because, for the old fashioned term, it's electrified. So you don't necessarily tend to pick up on those things. Sometimes they get lost, whereas when you're hearing it in its natural state, you pick up on it more. But yeah, it
Yeah,
was
like I
beautiful.
don't feel like in the album version you can hear that level of harmony in the guitars
No,
like that.
no, you can't. It's there, but you can't hear it.
Yeah, and it was incredible. I think this entire acoustic set was such a highlight for me in the show. And it is funny that it's the first thing. So it was like I think it was my favorite part of the show.
Yeah.
Um
So if
yeah.
so, what would have happened if they'd done this as an arena tour? The traditional thing that you do for an arena tour, if you are going to end up playing a section where it's going to be acoustic, Brian Adams does this one very, very well. He basically starts the show out as a rock and roll show, and then
Mhm.
for his first act, his second act, he moves to the center of the arena or the stadium onto a small
Mhm.
stage, and here he'll literally just perform with an acoustic guitar, and it's
Right.
normally that song. We don't mention that song; it's that song, and then he'll then go back to the main stage with some form of
Right.
spectacle to sort of like disarm everybody, but that's how you have to do it if you're in an arena or a stadium. Whereas if you're in a
Mhm.
theatre, you can start off quietly. You can build because you're introducing a
Mhm.
character. The way that they've done it is it's the Rose as a character, not as a band or as individuals. They're introducing the story of them, and it's really
Mhm.
well done because you sort of like it's small and it's tiny and it's quiet and it's humble, and then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have
Yeah.
worked. It wouldn't have worked in an arena, but in a theater, that works really well.
I think another highlight to me that I don't think we've seen much since maybe some very early content of The Rose is Ha-Jun playing guitar.
Yeah,
So he
which is
played
quite nice
guitar
to
in
see. Yeah,
Childhood and Definition of Ugly is, and I just thought that was so wonderful,
I
to see him.
I think we forget how good a musician Hajuni is. I mean, we know how good a drummer he
Yeah,
is, but I think we forget
yeah,
actually how good just an all rounder he is, to be honest. And I
yeah,
hate to say this
absolutely.
tends to be a bloody drummer thing. They're all the same.
Yeah, I mean, he can play piano, he can play
Yeah.
guitar, and then also seeing him play multiple types of percussion instruments all throughout these various acoustic songs, I think was so lovely as
Yes.
well. Um, all right, let's move on to something that I think again I really want to recognize on this tour that was very unique was the set design, Kelly. This
Yes.
set we've talked about it a little bit in previous episodes, but I'm glad that we can spend some real good time kind of diving in. So, I want to kind of mention first before we get into the set, you talked about that curtain that was
Mhm.
behind them during the acoustic. And so they did this wonderful piece where they pulled it down and it was like this reveal and you've got the intro to Nebula and Sammy comes out and he did this fun introduction. He had little variations here and there along the way, but it
Oh.
mostly was the same. So let's play that for our listeners too, because that was one of my favorite parts as well.
We are the Rose, nice to meet you. Make some noise for a drummer, Dylan. Our handsome, romantic bassist, Jeff. And our crazy, sexy scientist, Liam. Hello, everybody. My name is Sammy. Nice to meet you. Welcome to Once Upon a World.
I loved that. So there were several variations that Sammy did along the tour. The New York one was probably the best one I had, but a lot of times, and he didn't do this in New York, so I'm kind of bummed, but that was my best one. But he usually introduced Hajun as our sexy drummer. So that's usually what he did. He always said romantic bass is Jeff. And then he always had some variation of Dojun being this scientist.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Hi, I'm Sammy." But as I was going through all my content, now I can't remember which show it was because they kind of get mixed in my mind. There was only one show, and it wasn't The Soul because I wasn't at that one, where he introduced himself as Wusung. And I was a little bit thrown off. I was like, wait a second. Like, he always says Sammy. Yeah, he said Wusung in one of them, but I just thought that was so cute, and I loved that. And then usually Dojun does, because he starts that song, and then when he kicks it over to Sammy in the second chorus, he'll say something like charismatic Sammy or sexy Sammy. I think one of them he called him a sexy charismatic werewolf or something.
That was one of my favorite, the charismatic werewolf Wusung.
I'm like, what is a charismatic werewolf? I'm not quite sure what's happening there.
Have they been watching Twilight or something? Is this what?
I know. But we learned throughout this tour that it was, again, Dojun that designed the whole stage. Yeah. So Kelly, I've got this nice photo. Let me share this, kind of some side-by-side photos for our viewers. And why don't you start to walk us through what we learned about the stage?
Have to do my full-on theatre training here. Is this what's happening? Ooh. Basically, I'd like to say it's drawn on the back of a fag packet, as we refer to it in the UK. Obviously drawn on graph paper. Let's get this right, Kelly. So what you can actually see is they have created almost an in the round stage set. Or Dojuni has, shall we put it this way. So the front part of the stage, as discussed beforehand, is a very narrow section of the stage, which is literally only just wide enough really to be able to walk behind the wedge monitors and the stools so the guys can sit down and actually play. Then you've got the kabuki curtain, and then as that drops, it opens out and you have what is in essence an apartment behind you. And it's really beautifully done, and it is proper theatre construction. I mean, we don't have the full scenic boards that you would have in a theatre because they're quite cumbersome, and a lot of the places that they were using wouldn't actually have the trussed availability to be able to move proper scene boards around. So what they've done is they created these what are, in essence, like a lighting box, and the lighting boxes act like a window to the apartment, and around them and they're on wheels, so they move around so the stage crew can move things in and out, and make any adjustments that they need to do. So you have it's set up so you have like a bookcase, you have like a window which has actually got quite a nice little window seat in it, so the guys could actually sit in it. And what happens is, because it's got a mesh at the back of it, which allows light to shine through the front and through the back, it allows this quite lovely scenic shadow casting as well, which was something which actually they could have done some really nice reverse projections onto, but they probably didn't need to do that because it might have been a little bit too much. But that was something they could have done with that section of prop with the actual windows. And then as you move into the central section, you've basically got what would have traditionally been the drum riser. But obviously Hajuni is playing on the floor, so they're doing the traditional lineup in 4. So the back has got like a drum riser section on it, 2 higher sections at the side, which has basically got seating sections on it. So one's got like a Chesterfield leather settee on it. The other side is set up more like a small sitting room, and it has over there like an armchair and various knickknacks, shall we say, like fans and God knows what else on the floor. And then in the middle, there's a bed. And obviously, a double bed. And that just becomes a running staple fucking gag throughout the entire tour, which we will get onto in a bit, but it changes continuously. Then you move a little bit further round and you've got bookcases and everything else again. And on these bookcases, you don't necessarily notice to start off with, but there are books and there is a wonderful selection of vinyl. And I didn't really notice until we were in Berlin, and I was stood with two of my friends, and I was literally going, "Oh my god, there's Sergeant Pepper over there," and "Oh my god, there's so and so over there," and "Oh my god," and I collect vinyl. I'm allowed to have a meltdown every now and again, and it was quite entertaining to see the level of detail that had actually gone onto these shelves. I mean,
Oh,
there were
yeah.
plastic plants and God knows what else, and fans and all sorts of little
Yeah.
weird knickknacks. At the side of the bed, in front of one of the armchairs, there was actually a train set. There was a working train set.
It was
on the thing.
moving.
It was moving.
Before
Yeah,
we move
exactly.
on, I've got a picture to show what it really looks like, but I just want to comment a little bit. I just am in love with this little drawing. Like, I don't know why. I love his little like circle with Leo's name, circle with Sammy, circle with Jeff, circle with Dylan. Like, I just love the level. And then he's like big roundish rug. And then he's got like acoustic set. Like, I adore the level of detail that he put. And then when we move on to what it literally looked like,
It did
it's
really
like
well.
it comes to life. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was really amazing. And again, you mentioned it, and that was the point. It was like they're bringing us into their home, right? And we talked about that on World. One of the major themes in World was they went home.
Yeah.
You know, they went home to write that album in Busan, and they brought us into their home in this entire experience at their show. And there's the train. You can kind of see it there in the background behind Sammy's shoulder. And all of the level of intricate detail you talked about with, you know, all the little aspects of the set. It was just so well done.
One of the things I love, so obviously as we move a bit further around, there's also a door as well, which they use for entrance and exit. To much a plume at the end of the show. One of the things I really love is this back wall. It's a really simple idea. That back wall works so well, and it is such a traditional thing for theatre. And the prop wall works brilliantly well. And then what they'd actually done is they'd placed an LED wall behind it, and that LED wall actually acted as a screen to the outside world. To me, they could have probably played a little bit more on the window and actually had more of the outside world. But obviously they'd already got animation done for certain things like Lifeline and things like that. So these things cost a hell of a lot of money. So you're not just going to go, actually, let's just scrap that and just, you know, here's some aerial footage of Seoul or whatever. But it was something that could have probably been used a little bit more to sort of, in the initial stages of it, to show it more as the outside world. But I thought that was a really lovely touch, and I really liked that. I think the only time it kind of lost the magic of it is when Jack walked across the back of it every now and again to take a photograph. It's like, hold on a minute, is Jack cleaning the windows?
Yes. I think it was well done and slowly, because I think they projected like maybe it was like snowing outside or something like that.
So there was a couple of bits that were really beautiful. So there was one bit where it was like a wood cabin, and it was lit. You were looking out over that, and you got the snow falling, and that was really beautiful. And the other one that I really liked was the full moon. The bit with the full moon was beautiful.
Yeah, the full moon
I thought
was
that worked
lovely.
really, really well. Obviously, when you're on the ground floor, it works a little bit better because you're kind of looking at it more at eye height and looking up into it. Whereas, obviously, Anne and myself were up on the top of the balcony on the second day in London. And I'm so glad we got that, because we got to see the whole stage. We got to really embrace how much work had gone into this, and just the level of detail and the craftsmanship. I mean, to actually build this scenery, it's not easy to do this. And even the companies, because of the construction of them, and the companies that they've had involved, and to ensure that they actually survived the entire tour,
Mhm.
because some of them can be quite
Yeah.
flimsy. The
I wanna talk
construction on
about
these were brilliant. They really were.
yeah. Yeah, before we talk about the logistics, because I think that's such a key thing for us to discuss, I just want to say a couple more things on what I enjoyed is how they interacted with the various aspects of the set. So it could be jumping on the bed during some of the hype songs like Red or Cosmo. In other songs that were more subdued, they would sit on the chairs
Yeah.
or on the couch and play their guitar or on the windowsill. They would take a break during Men's, and Hajun would get up from behind his drum set and go sit on the couch or sit on the bed. I really enjoyed the way they interacted and used the set pieces. There was a funny part at New York during the Men's where Sammy just kind of, I don't know that I ever saw that he did this in any other show, but he went over and gave a little tour of the set, and he's like, hey, look at this fake plant, look at this lamp that really isn't plugged in, haha. Like he was like showing us little pieces like that, and so it was really a treat. But as you're saying, the level of work to the crew, and I think this is where we really need to recognize James Hill, the tour manager for the Rose, and his amazing crew, who had to set this up every night, take it
Yeah.
down after the
Yeah.
show, pack it on 3, as you would call them, lorries. In America, I
Right.
say truck, but lorries. And we have a photo of that. Let me show that for our viewers and listeners too, because you had a great view from where you guys stayed in the London show, Kelly. So walk us through kind of what we're seeing here in this photograph.
Honestly, I couldn't believe it when we turned up at the apartment. It was like, we are literally about 5 meters away from the venue. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So that is the back of the O2 Indigo, as part of what would have been the Millennium Dome. So you can actually see that there are several very, very large lorries, or trucks for our American cousins. Um, and they will have loaded all of that scenery into there. I mean, don't get me wrong, there'll be merch and God knows what else loaded in there, but I mean, you've literally got a settee. Anybody who has ever moved home and moved a settee, you know how heavy those damn things are. And Chesterfield
Yeah.
settees are not light by any stretch of the
Yeah, and I
imagination.
remember James Hill posted a picture on his Instagram story from one of the airports, and he put on that story they had 68 suitcases
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
took with them everywhere, and they had to
yeah,
fly with 68
yeah.
big, massive suitcases. Like, again, just recognition to the hard work of James Hill's crew on this tour. And he has a Rattling Bones Club, I think is his
Yes,
YouTube
it
channel.
is.
And he
It's
shared
yeah.
this great video of some behind the scenes. All right. So, Kelly, that was like a snippet of some of the behind the scenes that, again, James Hill, the tour manager for the Rose, showed us on his Rattle Bones Club YouTube channel. What are your thoughts on that? I love
I
that
think it's
behind the
brilliant.
scenes.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, I'm kind of used to behind the scenes stuff, being the idiot that I am. But I always find it really interesting to watch these things. So if you ever get a chance, go and
Mhm.
watch Rattling Bones on YouTube. It's There's so much on there that I think most people would find very interesting, and also a little sort of like, oh, didn't expect that to be the case. So James works with a hell of a lot of high profile bands, one being the
Mm.
Sheffield band While She Sleeps. There's a lot on there about the guys being on tour and doing European tours. But so if you're interested in tour management or sound engineering or anything like that, it is so worth a watch. They're really interesting little shorts to watch.
Yeah, I've started watching some of his content, and you're right. It's really interesting. I love seeing any of those things behind the scenes. And so yeah, definitely check out, listeners and viewers, his content. All right, let's move on to kind of the next aspect of the show we wanted to talk about, and that is the Ments, or as you like to call it, waffle time. And so I think, again, this was hilarious, Kelly, because I so remember us before this tour even
Well before
started,
this tour. Well before
we
this tour.
said that we would love for the Rose to be less scripted.
Yeah.
Then suddenly the tour starts and we're seeing all of these clips. I think we commented in some episodes that we were doing around that time of how magically they start to be this like unscripted Ment that turned into a script, kind of, because like
It did eventually turn into a script. It did
That's
eventually
Sammy.
become verbatim.
he kind of got a little shtick going, and you know, he got comfortable and familiar, but
Yeah, definitely. It did get to a point where it was kind of like, I think during Europe it was lovely because every night was different, and and to the
yeah,
point where they were like trying to prove that they didn't have a script. They turned around their actual teleprompters at the front of the stage, was like, look, it just says Ment. There's no script. There's no script. And that was really nice because it was engaging, and it was ad lib and it was genuine and it was a nice flowing conversation. But I must admit, that was throughout Europe. When it got to America, it felt like it became more scripted. There would be differences
yeah,
during the night, but at that point that was going to be said, and at that point that was going to be said, and at that point that was going to be said. There might be slightly different textual annotations within it, but generally speaking, it was the same script every night. And I mean, there was some really lovely gags in there. There were some terrible gags in there. There were some things I wish was never said, but even so, it was enjoyable, and it was nice because they appeared to be enjoying themselves whilst talking to the audience, which was fabulous. And I mean, I have one absolute favourite moment from the entire tour, and that was in LA in Inglewood at the YouTube Theatre. And Tay walks down to the front and delivers his little part of the script, because obviously by now it's kind of come a little bit of a script. And he's talking away, and then just from stage right somewhere in the audience, over by that side, you literally just hear this guy, just point this out, guy at the top of his voice, in quite a deep voice, just shout, Opa!
Oh yes,
just died. Everybody just died. So, like, Anne, do you want to explain the term Opa?
So that would traditionally be what a woman would call her older brother. You can also kind of use it if he's not your brother, but he's like someone that you find sexy or your boyfriend. It's also kind of used in that way, which sounds a little bit creepy, but
it's creepy. It's creepy. I hate that.
Yeah.
However,
that was funny.
The beautiful thing about this is once he'd actually composed himself, because he was in hysterics for at least 5 minutes, he couldn't do anything, and he literally just went, "What's up, Daesung?"
Yeah, he did, which means younger sibling in Korean.
It was just, honestly, the place just erupted. It was hilarious. I've never laughed so much. Well, actually, I've laughed several occasions, but that was normally when somebody face planted almost. But I must admit, that was hysterical, and that was probably one of my favourite parts of the Men all for
I
the
think
entire tour. I love that
I
bit.
think I think mine had to have been the peak of the joke that kind of started in the section when they were talking about their origin story and they mentioned Hyundai, and there's the whole meme now of the Hyundai guy. I'm going to play that clip along with, and this was at the Stanford show with Sammy having this great joke about his mom.
But some of you know Hyundai as different than I do. You guys know of it as like, excuse me. Whoa! How are you? I need to. Okay, I'm not gonna do it today. You know? I can't do it. Let me go over my story. Okay. Excuse me. Are you open-minded? You know, this is hilarious because my mom always wanted me to go to Stanford or an Ivy League.
Yeah. We came.
Yeah, I'm here, Mom.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. We came.
I'm at Stanford. So today, actually, I called her as soon as I got here. I was like, guess what? I'm at Stanford performing. He's like, oh, no. Can you imagine if I was a dentist right now, if I could, you know. I think she wanted me to be a dentist. Such a typical Asian mom. Anyways.
I loved that because I think, as you said, there were times he got comfortable with his little shticks and he kind of kept him going. But there were other times where he did go very organic, and it was something that he did not in any other show, and you just got that kind of unique moment.
I mean,
and I think those were my favorite ones.
Yeah, I mean, Stanford was hilariously funny. I must admit, I remember laughing like a goon when he was on about his mum wanting him to be a dentist. So many gags,
I think another piece that was funny to me that, again, you and I have been saying ever since the Rose Star trailer came out, the teaser, of how they seem to be really trying to bring in more male listeners and diversify their listener base. And in every show, part of kind of the men's that I felt like it was like, okay, guys, this is the talking point, so make sure you hit on this. And they did it in a joking way, but what they were trying to do, in my opinion, in a joking manner, was show the level of men that were there. Yeah. And I felt like that was true. And men of all ages, be it, younger sons and teenage sons that are there with their moms, be it boyfriends, husbands, be it brothers, be it grandfathers, that I met a grandfather who was there with his granddaughter. And in every case of those men that I spoke with, none of them were being dragged. And that was the little shtick joke that they would have. Oh, you're dragged here, but you're going to come away liking us.
That's the thing. And I mean, they're coming out with this shtick gag of like, oh, these guys have been dragged along and they're all with women that have dragged them along. Do you know what? I spoke to about 6 guys who were all sat near me at varying different shows. There were no women with them at all. They'd all come on their own. In fact, most of them had come with like one of the male mates. And they'd come to see him. And these guys were just so happy that they'd managed to get tickets. They wanted to see him on the last tour, didn't get to see them. I don't think the guys realize that they do have that outreach and it's further than they think it is. I mean, I know a lot of, I don't want to say black roses. Can we say black knights for the guy? I know a lot of black knights.
Yeah, I think we should use that term. I'm going to start it here on KROCKcast because I've never actually heard the guys using it. But the Rose, if you're listening, you need to start using that, and you need to give your male listeners an identity, just as you've done with your female listeners from the beginning. So little shout out here. Kelly and I want to do an episode focused on male listeners. So if there are any Black Knights out there that do listen to our podcast, hit us up in DM on Instagram. We would love to bring some guests on to talk about kind of your experience as a male fan of the Rose. But yeah, there were plenty of Black Knights out in the audience, and they absolutely are not there being dragged. And so I think that's great. I think it's good. I'm glad that the Rose is looking to diversify their listener base. I think the other piece I loved and I noticed very much in not just the sound checks as well, but also throughout the Ments, was including Ha-Jun and Taehyum and allowing them a chance to speak, because the Rose is so heavily represented by Dojun and Woo-sung. And while I adore both of them to pieces, nothing against either of you guys, I enjoy hearing from Taehyum. I enjoy hearing from Ha-Jun more. I enjoyed hearing them sing in the sound checks. And so this was just a lovely opportunity to kind of put them a little more out in the forefront on this tour. And then you mentioned this a little bit. So the running gag, and it was fun to see this running gag evolve, because I went to, I think, 6 shows altogether. So I went into all of my content of when they introduced being in their apartment. That was kind of what they said, and the bed. And it was funny to hear it evolve. And I found the day that Sammy changed his little delivery to "my fucking bed," because he did not always say that. And I found the first show that he said it in, which kind of was really fun.
We're here just hanging out together on the bed. So, whose bed is this today? You know whose bed this is? Yeah. This is Dylan's bed. Where all the magic happens. And as you can tell, it's very engaging, intimate. We're gonna make this show together. Because we have invited you into our fucking bedroom. What was this? Bedroom. Yeah, it's my new way of talking. Okay. Fucking bedroom. Yeah. Okay. So this bed here, we have brought to you. This bed is from Leo's house. What? Yeah, I wouldn't sit there if I were you. We have invited you into our fucking bedroom right here. Yes, and we have specially, just for today, for DMV, we brought Dylan's bed from his bedroom. Yes, this right here is from Dylan's bedroom. Oh, okay. So, yeah. We have invited you, all of you, into our fucking bedroom. Yes, and especially, just for today, we have brought Leo's bed from his bedroom. Hey, stop it. Because we have invited you into our fucking bedroom. Yes. And especially for LA today, we have brought from Korea my fucking bed. Where all the magic happens.
That in New York was when he started the little shtick of like, my fucking bedroom, and then he just kept going with it because he loved. And then did you notice there at Stanford how Tay added the strum of the guitar, and then he did it again in Englewood? So it's like this whole thing just kept like escalating.
The momentum of it kept up, and I just loved. It was always Tay's expression of sheer horror every time he mentioned whose bed he was. It was like, ah!
I know, it was so funny. And I I think LA might have been the only time he said it was his bed. I don't know if any other show.
I heard him on one of the other ones. I don't know whether it was Berlin. He said it was his bed as well.
Okay, because he definitely didn't say it was his bed very often.
No.
I like the one from Stanford where Leo goes, "Hey."
I know.
I didn't want to make that clip because it was already over 2 minutes. I didn't want to make it too long, but there was a funny part in the Maryland one that I ended up cutting off, but they went on this whole tangent when they said it was Dylan's bed that they were going to auction it off and started live auctioning with those of us in the audience. And I may or may not be in the background yelling $500, but you know, I did set that up.
Of course. I mean, why would you want the mattress? Why would you want that?
Hey, I'm just saying.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, it was hysterical, but I thought the Men's was just like such kind of a unique and fun aspect of the show that they've never really done before. I hope they kind of keep that more organic, you know, interaction in there, and they're just less scripted and more themselves.
Yeah,
so
I found the Men's really sweet, to be perfectly honest. I quite enjoyed them.
Yeah.
I found it slightly better than the Sermon on a Sunday that we kind of got with Where We Were during the Dual tour. Because it did feel a bit sermony in places. Don't get me wrong, Sam can kind of fall into a minister voice every now and again when he's talking about serious things. He can. I do feel like I was like, oh, come on, we're at church, cry. Come on, why are we doing this? It can happen every now and again. I did notice though, because obviously, I mean, us doing this show, we do have to pay attention to the other shows that we haven't gone to as well. And I think we both agree that the Soul show, the Men's didn't go over as well, did they? They kind of fell a little bit flat. And I think that was possibly more to do. I think it was probably more to do with the fact that obviously there was, you know, you got a half and half audience in there. So you got a lot of people who traveled internationally, and a lot of them had probably already seen the show as well. So you'd got like the Men being done in Korean and then being translated into English. So that kind of messed with the timing a little bit. But I also don't think some of the jokes went over as well in Korean to the Korean audience, which was a shame. So it kind of lost its pacing, I think, a little bit, having seen various clips of it from friends that were there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think, yeah, watching the clips and then hearing firsthand from people who attended live, I think it's what you said. I think cultural translation, you don't talk that way in Korean. Like you don't, you know, into my fucking bedroom. Like you don't say, you would never be on stage in front of your audience and speak to them like that in Korean culture. And so I think if you think about like how he would have had to have like translated that, like, yeah, it just didn't hit the same. I think the level of informality is also not common, right? Like yeah. And I think it's unfortunate that I guess like part of kind of the culture there as well when you're at these shows is you're not standing up. You're not jumping up and down. You're not like yelling and screaming.
You're not in
and
the
it's like,
moment, are you?
It's like that kind of low energy be fine in the first part of the show that we talked about. But as the show progresses, they need to feed off the energy of the audience. And
you
I have to
need
think
that.
it kind of seemed like a downer. But yeah, I don't think it delivered nearly as well. And there was a disconnect there culturally.
It felt like it. From what I saw, it felt like it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really want to go and see them play a home show. But there is part of me, I'm sort of like in two minds. It's like I want to see them play a home show, and then there's another part of me that's just like, I know the shows are going to be better elsewhere. And that sounds horrible to say, and I don't really want.
I agree.
but I think it's more about how they come across as a band, and also
Mm.
how the audience accepts them and interacts with them. They're an
Yeah.
international band. I know the guys like to put out that they're a Korean band, but they are an international band. And
Mhm.
that's more about how they present themselves as well.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
they don't they don't sort of they don't fall back into this honorific sort of um over polite thing that you frequently get
Right.
with a lot of sort of Korean shows.
Mhm.
And you tend to find the acts that pull out of that are the ones where, generally speaking, one or two or all of the members are Korean but have lived or grew up somewhere else. So they
Mhm.
have more of that international standpoint and understanding. And then the shows seem to be much more interesting. But yeah, it was a shame. I think for the last show to kind of feel flat after we'd
Yeah.
seen it progress and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was like, oh, it sort of went a bit.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think they had a incredible show at Englewood to wrap
They
up,
did. They did.
the US leg, and we know that the South American audience is so amazing and so hype.
Yes.
I mean, to be kind of honest, want I don't envy that plane ride I'd have to do, but it is on my bucket list to go see them in
Yeah.
South America, because
Yeah.
that South American audience is so high energy, and so those shows seemed incredible. And then you're right. Then they had the festivals, which that's always pretty high energy. And then they
Yeah.
ended in Seoul, and it was like womp womp.
It felt like
But
that. It
it
did
did
feel
kind of
like
feel
that,
that
to be
way.
honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right, Kelly, there's an aspect of this tour I kind of think we really need to kind of talk about a little bit and
yeah.
address. And I think unfortunately it's Sammy's voice challenges that
Yeah.
got progressively worse throughout this world tour. Um, I feel like they had a nice break in between the European leg and the US leg. It was maybe about 7 days. And that allowed him to rest his voice. So when I saw him in Minneapolis, which was the first show on the US leg, his voice was extremely strong.
Yeah.
Then the tour got pretty aggressive throughout the US and then went into the South American leg, where they actually had no break in
Yeah.
between the Englewood show and the Sao Paulo show. And it's a pretty tough flight. They really only had the travel time they needed, and then they had to perform right away, to the point to where his voice had gotten so bad that at the Sao Paulo show, he honestly could barely sing some of the songs.
Yeah.
And he admitted in his ments that he almost walked off the stage, and he was so frustrated by how bad his voice challenges were. What's kind of your reaction to that?
It's challenging. It's difficult. We know he has an issue that he's got to get sorted, and a lot of that he has to deal with himself. I'm kind of hoping that he's wherever he is, he's in his treatment now, and he's getting that sorted. But there are lots of things that he can do while he's out on tour to look after his throat. And I mean, obviously, I mean, we joked in one of the previous episodes regarding him showing us the fact that he was keeping hydrated, and here's his 3 bottles of water. Good.
I
That's what you need to
know.
do.
We
You
were
need
so
to.
proud of you, Sammy.
I am. I'm proud. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for listening. And you do. You have to maintain your hydration. It's not
Mhm.
about hydrating and lubricating the throat. It's actually about internally hydrating it as an actual organ as such. You have to maintain that. So it's that helps with the elasticity of the muscle and the support and everything else that's actually there. And if you're not properly hydrated, it soon runs down, and that sends you off. but there are other things that you need to do while you're on tour. Obviously, we know when he got to America, he had a cold. That wouldn't have helped.
Yeah.
That would not have helped at all. And that will have come from, I mean, if anybody out there is like me, I know damn well the minute I'm going to get a cold is the minute I stop. The minute I stop and supposedly have 5 minutes rest, it's like, you know, I'm half dead up to
Yeah,
the next day.
it was a shame because he started so strong in Minneapolis for the US leg, and the very next show, Chicago, was where he came down with this cold. I believe he had tea on stage
Did.
and was
He did have
drinking
throat
that to
tea.
help his
Yeah,
throat during
yeah.
that performance.
So that would have
Yeah.
probably been throat coat, which is there's several throat teas out there that you can get that actually ease your throat. Some of them are herbal, some of them are slightly medicinal, and it coats the throat, and it basically takes away the rawness in your actual throat. I mean, the old idea was that you drink hot honey in water, and I mean, it kind of soothes it for 3 or 4 seconds, but it doesn't really do anything as such. So you have to do things like throat coat and that. But one of the things, and I don't know whether he does this while he's on tour, but if you're doing a prolonged tour, something that is actually very good to use is a nebulizer. So steam inhalation is one, that was the old fashioned method where you'd literally put your head over a bowl of boiling water with some eucalyptus and God knows what else in it, and a towel over your head and inhale. And that definitely does help because it helps loosen up the vocal cords and things like that. But an actual saline nebulizer is a brilliant thing. The little handheld things, you literally just put it over, 15-20 minutes before you go on stage, literally just have it on your face just while the saline runs out. It's like a tiny little saline bit that goes into it. And that actually really helps because it's saline, and it does help the actual vocal cords. It's not just coating it and tricking it into thinking that's the way forward. I don't know whether or not he'll have been recommended one of those yet by whoever he's seeing through his vocal treatment. But I mean, it would be something that quite a few professionals use. And it is a recognized thing. But I mean, to hear him in Europe, he sounded great. There was no, I mean, I've got, obviously being a singer, I'm attuned to hearing those slight cracks and things like that. I mean, not the big cracks you can hear slide up into note and you just go, oh, it's kind of struggling there. And I could tell when he'd sort of like two or three dates into America, and it was like, oh, he's starting to struggle now. But do you know what? I think one of the really lovely things was actually seeing the guys step in.
Yeah.
And especially during sound check, because this is the thing. I mean, he's not just playing a gig. He's having to do a sound check. He's having to talk to people all day long. Then he's on stage.
Yeah.
He's not just singing, he's doing a ment and everything else. So, I mean, literally the guy's going yap, 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 yap all the way through. So the fact that the guys stepped in and helped, so we got Hajuni and Tay picking up vocals. Dojun picked up a lot of the lead lines in the actual sound checks that Sam would have traditionally done. So, I mean, they were definitely helping. They were there to support him. But I think we know he's hard on himself. And I think he might have been kicking himself a little bit. But you can't do that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, as I've said before, it's like breaking your leg and then moaning at yourself because you've broken your leg. And it's like, yeah, but you tripped over something, mate. These things happen. And it happens to a lot of people. You just have to look after yourself. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You can't do stupid shit. You can't. You've got to be healthy, and you've got to think about it that way. Yeah.
I think it was hard to watch him slowly disintegrate a little bit. Maybe that's not the best word to use, but I felt like as you watched him across the US tour, then into South America, it's just this slow disintegration of his voice. And then even through the festivals, like he would get a couple days break in between some of those, but not enough that it really helped. And then, by Soul, like he must have been in a lot of pain. I think
Yeah, I
about
mean,
that too, like the
yeah, I
level of
mean,
pain he must have
the,
been.
yeah, I mean, there is this thing that singers are divas, and there's a reason that that is in place. And a lot of the time, yeah, I mean, some of them are divas, but that's a different thing. But there is the reason that some people are classed as that is because they have to be on complete voice rest in between shows. They can't
Mhm.
talk to people. And I mean, it's not through want of not wanting to talk to people. It's literally the fact that you've got to save what you have got for the next show. Um, and that is it's horrible. It's horrible to know that somebody's going through that. I mean, as I've said before, I
Mhm.
mean, I had it when I was younger. It was bloody horrible. It felt like I'd got a splinter in my throat, but mine didn't last for long, and I wasn't doing prolonged singing over the top of it, and I was young. I mean, literally, I was a teenager. I mean, I managed to.
Mhm.
It healed really, really well. But obviously, he's an old fart now. You have to take more care of yourself. It's as simple
Yeah,
as
well,
that.
I think it was an important thing to kind of talk through. And as you said, probably by the time this episode is airing, hopefully he's going through his treatment.
I would have hoped
Hopefully
so.
he's doing well. So we'll keep him in our thoughts. So let's wrap up
Hopefully.
our deep dive with some of our favorite moments during the show. So we've done a lot of digging into all the aspects. What would you say, kind of, if you take a step back, are some of your favorite moments?
I There were lots of little things that I enjoyed. There were lots. I think the interaction. I liked the Ments. I thought the stage set was beautiful. I think it could have been used a little more, but that's me coming
Mm.
from a that world as such. It's so there was so like when you get onto the because what they do is so obviously we've described the first set. So the first set is the acoustic set, which is obviously their busking days, which is what it's alluding to. Second set is their apartment, which is very, very, very contained. And within that, and then you get the development of them as artists and everything else. And they, and you get the story of in a room this big, this is where we wrote these tracks. And I thought that was lovely. And it was sort of like it was
Mm.
context. It was context of them and their journey and their story. It was a mini
Mm.
documentary in itself, shall I put it that way? And then we got the crew on stage, and the crew were the Rose crew. They were Rose removals, and they came out in these fabulous overalls, and did the old, and let me just put it this way, the old cloak and dagger routine of let's get the
Mhm.
flashlights and flash the audience. So with the misdirected. So while you're sat doing this, you can't see what they're moving around on stage and things like that.
Yeah, we
And that
forgot to kind of mention that, Kelly, when we talked about the set and James Hill, which I have to think this was all probably kind of his maybe thoughts and ideas, but I love those overalls that they all had.
They
It
were
was
great.
so
They were great.
fun.
Like Jack was walking around wearing one while he was doing the
I
photographs as well, which
know!
was
I know,
hilariously
Jack
funny. It's
had
like,
it
I'm sorry,
too.
removal company, you've left. You've got a straggler. Bring him back. Um, and yeah, I mean it was just the little touches which were lovely, and it was so nice.
Mhm.
The thing I found quite, because then when they get onto the third act, what they do is they expand. Basically, the apartment blows out, so the back
Yeah.
window goes and it opens it up. So you've kind of got the sides of the apartment. The back window is taken away and it opens up to the bigger LED screen, which you kind of want for like the
Mhm.
animation that is playing in the background. Um, there's little bits, and they're just little niggly bits in my mind, that I think probably could have been a little bit more magical, when it came to how they used the set and how it was done. But as I said, that's me having grown up on a theatre stage and used to that world. Being musicians, if you've not grown up in that world and then you put on it, it's a very different thing, because normally when you're in a band, you walk on, If you're lucky, you've got drop curtains at the side of you. It's not very often that you've got all of the things that you would have in a theatre, until you get much, much bigger, and then you start to get all these additions as you go along, and all these props. But it kind of felt very homemade, and that sounds kind of weird. But I mean, even the Kabuki drop it literally felt like somebody had gone out and bought, like, I mean, it'd be like almost like a silk material. It's a very light blend. So it's because it's designed so you can bounce lights through it, but it obviously blocks the light from the back and things like that. But it had got snippets of patterns on it, and it looked like it was stitched together. And then you've got various sentences from various songs that looked like they'd been handwritten onto it. And it was just a beautiful touch. There were so many really, really lovely touches for the entire thing. The one thing I did get wrong at the very beginning, I said like the instruments had been painted and they'd probably just been painted for a video. They weren't. They used them for the entire tour. And that was a nice touch as well. But yeah, I know there were lots of things I really enjoyed. Personally, for me, Berlin was the best show.
So what made that better out of all the shows you saw?
London had issues, but to be perfectly honest, I now refer to it as the curse of the O2.
Yeah.
So they had a PA issue on the first night. I went to see Nine Inch Nails and they had microphone issues on that night. And then on the second night for the Rose, they had in-ear monitor issues. They had, it looked like they'd had like a power cut on stage as well. But you know what? They kept going, and the level of banter. Well done, lad. You were in England, you were in London, you understood the brief. If you're in London, you need banter. And those guys delivered on the Thursday. Banter was in full flow. I mean, some of it was a bit like, what's going on? I don't even know what's going off. I mean, at one point, Labubu's were mentioned. Then we'd got somebody shouting off of the balcony about the birthday. I mean, it did fall into panto at several points during the show, but it was great. It was brilliant, and I really enjoyed it. But there was a level of professionalism in Berlin. It was the sound. So may I just point out the venue in Berlin? Oh my God, the acoustics in that place. So when they did the first section of the acoustic set, the acoustics were beautiful. It reverberated. There was a warmth that you didn't hear anywhere else. The show just went on so well. They didn't feel like there were any issues. There was no Sammy walking up to the back mic to talk to the front of house and say, look, we've got an issue with this. Can you just increase the volume here or decrease the volume here? There was none of that. It seemed to flow really, really well. And the guys looked like they really enjoyed it. They looked like they were all having a really good night
too.
They all looked like they were having a really good night, and they just looked comfy. They looked comfortable on stage, which is nice to see, because sometimes you can go and see an act and you can kind of, there's every now and again, you'll spot one member and you'll just be like, they're having an off day. But there was none of that. Berlin for me was brilliant. Don't get me wrong. Stanford, beautiful venue. If I ever get the chance to play Stanford, I will love that. That is a stunning venue out in the open air. You were further forward than me. I was literally right in front of the sound desk, and it was so nice because I got to stand there and watch them play, and then I only needed to lift my head up ever so slightly and there was a night sky full of stars.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was part of me that kind of wanted to have taken a picnic and gone and sat a bit further back and literally just took in the entire thing. Honestly, it was stunning. And Inglewood, LA, was fantastic as well. But no, there was something about Berlin. Berlin just hit a little bit harder for me than anywhere else. Yeah.
I think for me, the acoustic set was just so wonderful. And the hearing those harmonies of the guitars and She's in the Rain is probably my favorite aspect of the show.
Mhm.
I loved the men's. I loved the more kind of natural, organic way they interacted with the audience and interacted with each other. I loved the set design. I think the intricacies we talked about of the set made it so unique and just created kind of this unique experience. And I appreciated that you went on the same kind of journey, through their story as you kind of shared. So I enjoyed that. I think of the shows, each of them kind of had their own color. I think it was tough for me because I'd never seen them before. And I was hyping it up so much in my head that all the sound problems you mentioned that they had that aren't their fault. And they worked through them in such a professional way, made the first show I ever saw a little bit tainted. And I was just like,
Yeah.
it wasn't quite the experience I think I had in my mind that it would be. And so that was a little bit of a disappointment. My second show was Minneapolis, and that venue was very beautiful. It was this old style theater that looked like it would have been built in the 30s or 40s. And I think, like you're saying, kind of the acoustics in that
Yeah.
theater were so wonderful. That was a magical experience. And then I think, as you said, the Stanford show, that amphitheater outdoor venue at night with the stars. And I think one thing that I didn't mention maybe before, but I will kind of share a little bit as a critique, I guess, is I do feel like the lighting in the indoor venues was hard when you were particularly filming. Like if you're taking photos or you're filming, it was very dark all the time on stage, and they lit the men up a lot just by like blue lighting or
Yes.
lighting that's coming from behind them, which then made it hard to actually see them. But when you were there at Stanford, it was natural lighting, and it was like everything felt brighter and more crisp, and like you could just experience it and see it better. So I think that was also kind of why Stanford sticks out. But then Englewood for me was my final show, and it was their final show in the US, and it's Sammy's hometown. And so it felt very, not sad, that's not the right word, but like bittersweet. I think it had like this like magical bittersweet moment for me where it was like, I kept calling it my summer of the rose. Like I had this most amazing summer of traveling literally the world, because I did go international, traveling the world and experiencing it with so many amazing friends. And it was like, oh, this is over now. And so I think Englewood is special in that way, too. And then we didn't say this, but I would also share the performance of Slowly was definitely a highlight.
I think the performance of Slowly was a highlight for everybody in there. I mean, you know
Yes.
that I love that song. The amount of, now please excuse the terminology that I am going to mention here, but the amount of ovulating women groaning as soon as Tay stepped forward and started playing that guitar solo, and I was like, hold up, what's happening? Oh dear, giddy ants.
You have some incredible footage from Berlin. Let's share that now.
Because I'm so tired.
loved that. I mean, like, I love to hear all the women screaming.
I mean, I'd got a couple of guys near me. Even the guys were screaming. And I'm thinking, is it that time of the month for you as well?
Oh my gosh, just take Yum's face. Whenever he plays that song, he gets so into that guitar part.
It's the blues. We've had this conversation, woman. You have to.
We did. We talked. I went on this weird. I had a weird tangent with him in that episode.
It's the blues.
And then this one was cool because Sammy, sometimes he did that on the bed. He started in different ways in that song, but I love it. Berlin, he was laying on the bed and just like singing like that. I just love that. It was such a neat touch.
It was hilariously funny though, because obviously, I mean, I was holding the camera filming that, and then you could kind of see that at one point he couldn't shift. It was like, okay, I may be here forever.
I know he did kind of look like it was hard to get himself up.
It was like watching an old man roll out of bed. I half expected him to stand up going, oh, my back. It was very funny.
I loved that. Well, let's wrap up the day. We were not at the Dusseldorf show, but we have this fan cam from someone on YouTube that posted it because this was the most funny, chaotic moment, I think, that happened on the entire tour. During the performance of the song Yes. And so let's play this as we wrap up the episode because it's just so the Rose.
Sun will rise. There go, sing this harmony. Raise these memories now make us in everybody. This is take your right hand. Just look, we start lost and share no time.
That is just so perfect to end this show because there's just like every aspect of that video is everything we love about the Rose, right?
It's like watching Gonzo and Fozzie Bear.
Okay, I had to put in that slow motion because the debate to me is did the guitar hit Dojun in the face?
Yes, it did. You can actually hear the thud. So
you can hear the thud, but like, how is his nose not bleeding from that?
Well, I mean, I think it hit him here. I think it hit him under the chin. I don't think it hit his nose. But saying that, I think because you can hear. So when you've got your guitar or bass or whatever, and it's connected to an amp, if you knock the headstock, you do get that. So it definitely made contact. And
it did.
You can see him a bit later when he's behind Hajun's drum kit and he's like, oh shit.
That had to have hurt.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Surprised if he'd not got a fat lip the next day.
I wondered if he did. Oh my gosh. I was like, Dojun, you're a trooper because you didn't act like it hurt at all. But my gosh, it looked like it.
And Sammy's voice crack on that is hilarious because I mean, it wasn't a voice crack. He suddenly went back to puberty. That was literally 12-year-old Sammy as his voice was breaking, wasn't it? It was that squeak that you get with teenage voices, like.
Oh my God. And then he couldn't. He was done. He was on the floor.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
you know,
I'm
I
kind
think
of
it's so
glad
funny.
I wasn't. Yeah, I'm glad
It's like,
I wasn't there because I would have been in pain.
it's like that chaos is swirling, and there's Hajun. He's just stuck behind the drum, and he can't even move.
He was safe though. He was in his little world behind his drum kit. It was the safest place to be, away from that lot.
I'm like, that chaos is swirling around, and he's just over there singing his part, doing his drums. Like,
yeah, so mad.
oh, what a fun way to end. This tour was so special. It was really amazing. I definitely enjoyed it, and it was fun to dig into this today. All right, let's jump into our humor segment, Kelly, because I got this idea from the Rose themselves. I was watching some fun old content, and this came up by a question that was asked by a Black Rose in a live stream once. And their answers to this question with each other is hysterical. And I thought, how fun for you and I to do this. So, if you could trade places with a member of the Rose for a day, who would it be and why? And what do you want to do as them? So you're in their body for that day.
I don't want a Freaky Friday with any of them.
Yes, it is a Freaky Friday with a member of the Rose.
I don't want a Freaky Friday with any of them. Oh, no. No, but that means if I've swapped with them, they've swapped with me.
Yeah, don't worry about what they're doing. No, it's not about them and you. It's you and them.
No.
Yeah, it's about you being in their body.
No. I mean, it'd probably be nice to be able to stand up and have a piss without getting it on your shoes. But I mean, other than that,
Ugh, I don't want to do that.
Well, I'm saying that. I mean, no, I'm not going to go there.
I've actually been thinking about this, and I don't know who I'd want to be. I think I'm still.
I don't think I want to be any of them.
You don't want their life for a day.
I don't think I want to be. I mean, I kind of feel like if I swapped bodies with them for a day, they'd all end up with some form of an upgrade by the end of the day.
How are you helping each of them?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good for them, and then I'd kind of come back to my body and think, I need to go to the garage. There's something really wrong here. But no.
I'm in between. I think I'm in between Hajun and Dojun. And so one major driver for me is I am not an artistic, musical, creative person. And I see those two members in particular as being extremely creative and musical and very gifted. And so how fun to be in the body of someone that can do that talent and has that talent. And I could kill it playing drums. Like I can just or I would be able to sit down and create this beautiful music on a piano like Dojun or create a song like him. Like I think that would be amazing.
But not no. So no. So this is where I need to ask a question.
Oh, you have a clarifying question?
This is a clarifying question. So when you do a body swap, do you do a soul body swap? So your soul moves into that person and your thoughts and that. But do you maintain their characteristics and motor neuron functions?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Or do you go into their body and it's basically like a meat puppet?
I was thinking it's like your soul is swapping. But you keep any ability that person has. Like you would be able to do that too.
I don't think. think there's no.
Oh, you're
I'm
you're you're gonna go nobody for the first time?
nobody. I'm sorry, guys. I love you all
Oh,
dearly, but
wow.
no, you can all keep your stinky meat puppets.
Oh. Well, I guess I'll be either Dojun for a day or I'll be
Mhm.
Hajun for a day. Be making some beautiful
Well, I mean, if your
music.
soul's stopping around, I mean, you could probably pop in and out of all of them and have a, and take it for a test drive.
No, I would, well, if I have to pick one, I'm gonna go Dojun because I get the added benefit of being able to hang out with Sammy all day as my like band wife. So I
Of
get like I get to hang out with him as my band wife, and then I get to make beautiful music. So I think I'll go Dojun. I'll be
now,
Dojun
you
for
see,
a
now this
day.
is another. No, so this right? Okay, we're in deep now. We're in deep, deep territory.
Mm.
So if we're just doing a soul swap, are you literally just the voice and eyes behind what's happening? Are you the internal fly on the wall? Or are you in charge of what they are doing for the day?
I'm in charge of what they're doing for the day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm in
because
control of his body. I can do what I want with it. What are you saying? You're trying to make me do something. Don't get me down a sus content route. Stop it. Stop it. I'm not trying to be sus content with Dojun and his body. I will be respectful to his body.
yeah,
I won't look
right.
anywhere I shouldn't be looking. We might need to
You
cut
went
it
there.
here.
You went there. I did not go there.
We might need to
No,
engage
no.
the safe word. We might want to wrap it up. All
Yeah,
right. Well,
yeah.
listeners, Kelly can't pick because she doesn't like, I guess, any of the options of being any member of the Rose for a day. I'm going to be Dojun so that I can make some amazing musical creations and hang out with Sam all day.
Is that what we're calling it?
Musical creations.
Musical.
Tell us if you could switch places with a member of the Rose for a day. Who would you pick? What would you do, and why? Join us next
Please,
time.
if you answer us this before we join next time, keep it clean.
Unless it's Thirsty Thursday, then you can get down and dirty. Join us next time. We have a new type of episode that we're going to be exploring. We got this actually as a recommendation from a listener. They wanted us to do some deep dives into individual members. So I believe we're going to be exploring our Maknae first. We'll start in age order, I think, and go up. And so we're going to be digging more into Taekyam, his background, his personality, his talents, his musical experiences. So that'll be a fun episode, something different. Please rate our podcast. Leave us comments about this episode. We always love to hear your feedback. Follow us across social media, Instagram, TikTok, X, and YouTube. We are at KROK_cast all across the board.
Click here to subscribe.
Email us at krock.cast@gmail.com. Check out our website. We're adding more and more content to our website. We have all of our artist recommendations and their bios in one place. All of our episode links are in one place, and our translations of the Korean lyrics all in one place. That is krockcast.com. And don't forget Patreon. Thank you to all of our Patreon members. We had a lovely hangout. Our first virtual hangout, Kelly, was in here in the month of October. We will be doing one again in the coming weeks before the end of the year. So if you haven't joined Patreon and you want to do our virtual hangout, sign up to be a member. We also provide exclusive content and future merch. So check that out. All right, everybody. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.